All right, let's talk about what it would take to reach the rating of 1200. And the first thing I want to say is it will be largely a continuation of the 3 skills we've talked about in the earlier videos. 1, controlling the material aspect of the game, not giving away your stuff. 2, learning how to think deeply about the game. And I just mean longer. It's hard to do. And an illustration of that is in our dojo training program with the practice games, the ones you have to analyze. We demand up to 1200 that you can still play games of game 45 plus 15, which is very fast. But after 1200, you have to at least play a 60-minute game. And that's an illustration of what we've observed, that people who are coming into the game don't yet have the ability to think long, right? To have deep thoughts about the game, because it's a muscle and it takes some time to develop the ability to think deeply and critically without getting distracted. And then the third thing, which I mentioned only past 1000, which is the feature of time, tempo, and the pervasiveness of people giving away time beginning here, well, beginning at the beginning, but really noticeable from 1000 to say 2300, people giving away time for free. Again, the rule of thumb is a pawn is worth 3 tempi. Okay, in addition to that, I want to say, in the training program, what we're going to allow you now to do, though, is we're going to say you've got enough foundations to start tasting, smelling the intellectual depth of the game, right? And there are several things that we're going to do here that are going to start that process, right? Which is not just about getting better at the game, but it's also about enjoying the game on a deeper level. Okay, now before I go on, I want to just make let's call it an illustrative point. Most players, especially those who have begun the game in recent years, are very tempted by openings. And at this level, we still don't want you to do any openings. Only after 1200 are we bringing openings into the mix. And I want to stress that it's not only what you do in the program, it's what you don't do. So not doing openings right now is a beautiful thing, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, especially when we look at the illustrative game. But here's the point I want to make. A great party trick you can do, so I don't know, we do it anyway, but imagine you have a friend. It doesn't have to be a party, is what I'm trying to say. You have a friend, and they're going to be interested in learning chess, and you're going to teach them some stuff, and you're going to play through some games. And one of the remarkably easy things you can do is you can teach them the rules of the chess opening. Pawn moves aren't developing moves. Every move needs to be a developing move, and don't move your pieces twice. Fight for the center. That kind of basic thing. And if you do it, and let them play a couple practice games and kind of slap their hand gently whenever they move the developed piece twice, very quickly, they will be playing grandmaster moves, okay? And so I want to really stress that you do not need any kind of deep theoretical construct to play good opening moves. It's an amazing thing about the game. It makes it very egalitarian, honestly, that anyone can come to the game and just by following the opening principles, play very good moves. And one of the things I want to stress about this, and we'll see this a little bit with the game that we're going to show later, is when you follow the principles of the game, you're getting a taste for what tempo time is and the importance of it, okay? So focusing on not doing openings, but rather on what we're going to talk about, our objectives in this segment of the 1100 to 1200 will help you far more, and frankly, it will be far more interesting than being sucked into, I don't know, YouTube videos about this or that opening. Okay, let's move on. And the first thing I want to do is just quickly, we're looking at 11 to 1200, so that's really up to 1300 USCF. And then the ChessCom and Lichess are, of course, inflated above that. And now let's take a look at the scoreboard. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing we got going with the scoreboard here. As you can see, the Polgar mate in ones here, a couple people have done, and no one has done Polgar mate in twos. We've been at this for about a month, and it's going to take a while for people to do this. I'm sure some people have been a little shy about it, but it's going to take some time, and you can see 307 to 1470 is already pretty difficult. And I want to stress the number 1470 is important because right after that, the problems become a lot more abstract and difficult. So that's then for the 1200 plus group. As you can see, a bunch of people have done the puzzle rush objectives and the survival. And we got the end games and the middle games, fantastic. And a couple things I want to stress here that are kind of beginning with this level. I feel that when we go from this level on, the material to study becomes a lot more interesting and difficult. And a book I very much enjoyed as a kid here is Most Instructive Games of Chess Ever Played. Beautiful book, very great illustrative games that really bring home certain concepts that you can use throughout your chess career. And this is really concepts that are a taste beyond what the things that I've been talking about with the material and time, just to give you a taste of what it might be. Very important. And then the classic games is 20 games by Lasker. As we go up, we feature one world champion at each point. And one of the nice things about it, or difficult things, is we're not talking about the most fancy games. We're talking about the brutal struggle. So this is Lasker facing Alekhine, or as Kosti would say, Alyoshin, Capablanca, Steinitz, Rubinstein, all these great guys of the past. And one of the cool things that's been going on at the dojo is people have been getting on a group call through our Discord and then just going over the games together. Of course, you can do it by yourself. If you're going to do it by yourself, definitely do it with a wooden board and pieces. But the group call is cool in the sense that you can just sit there and ask yourself, well, why did dude make that move? Right? And just through that process, again and again, why did he make the move? Why did he make the move? Questioning. Incredible progress to your chess. And so I want to stress that things like going over your games, this book, Most Instructive Games Ever Played, the classic games, far more substantive than any kind of opening work that you can do at this point and beyond, really. And so you can see we have nothing in the openings. Thank you very much. And then something else I want to stress with this classical games and postmortems, we are getting loads of submissions of games. I'm very impressed with the annotations. I was not convinced when we set up this program that the annotations were going to be good, especially not from the beginning, because I know from experience as a player and a coach that it takes some time to develop the skill of annotating your own games. So that's been great. You can see it's happening here. Also, this PM at the back, that doesn't have to be actually that big of a deal. It just means a postmortem. And so a lot of these games are played within the dojo. And so you have the opportunity to talk to your opponent after the game. And that's why we made it a requirement, just so that you get a taste of what the other person was thinking, what they thought the critical moments were. All right, let's move to the game. This has been played between Boss Day and Sabuha, and both of these guys are doing great in the program. And the first thing we're going to talk about is a little bit of openings, right? So they play this stuff. So far, you can imagine all of this. You don't need to know openings to play any of these moves. And white plays this very curious queen e2. And it turns out that this was even prepared. And let's talk about time. So at the moment, I would say that both players have played totally great. Black arguably is going to have to make three pawn moves in order to get his pieces out because he played this c6 move, right? So he's going to have to make another pawn move, whereas white will only have to make maybe only 2 pawn moves. Well, with that we can say that if he's able to do that, then he'll be up 2 tempi. You begin up 1 tempo, right? Now, knight f6, interesting. I played this actually as black when I was a kid. And a regular move here would be to take the knight on f6. White plays queen e2. It's very fancy. And one of the things I want to stress is a lot of times people make it too fancy, and they're like preparing and they're having all kinds of, letting the computer tell them funny things. And maybe this is a genius move, but to me it looks absolutely wrong because it's a negative tempo now, because this bishop is either going to have to ask the pawn to get out of the way or it's going to have to ask the queen to get out of the way. And the bishop really, really needs to move so that our king can castle. And black in his turn takes and then solves white's problem, right? And then queen e2 is no longer, we're not taking advantage of queen e2. So a more sensible move would be bishop f5. Do not, by the way, play knight d7. That would be mate, thank you very much. That would be a humorous end to this game. And something that really struck me as peculiar is that white had planned all of this in advance. I was like, he had planned this in advance. So he's saying all moves until this one were familiar to me, actually, so a couple more. And knight d7 was not familiar to him. Why? Because the engine, which I assume he was preparing with, didn't even think of it as a move. And there's a reason why. So one of the things I want to stress, okay, is that the energy that Basde has given to this opening analysis, right? If he could give it to other features of our training program, he would be helped. It would be to his advantage, right? Okay, now, knight d7. What's wrong with knight d7? It's not a developing move, right? And what would be normal? Something like bishop e7. Okay. Something I want to stress is a theme that came up in the last segment about 1000 to 1100. Namely, when your opponent loses time, that is the cue to start thinking about how to punish them. It happens again and again that the move where they lose time, that's where you say to yourself, oh, Kraai says these people are going to lose time all the time, and that's where my opportunity is going to be. And it really will be that way. You will have several opportunities from your opponent simply losing time with moves like knight d7. Okay? And one terrible thing that is not Basde's fault, he's the one annotating this game, by the way, is sometimes with like Lichess and stuff, it puts the computer analysis on there so fast you don't even have a chance to look at it yourself. And I think that's what happened here, because he noticed that the computer's evaluation bar went way up, and the computer's finding knight f7. Now, something I want to stress: I'm fine with looking at the game with the computer after, but definitely first, of course, you want to look at it on your own. And the reason is you can really learn about tactics and strategy and everything else by going over your own games. And so the dream would be that Basde had maybe going over this game on a wooden board at home and then suddenly says to himself, well, maybe something's wrong with the black position because he's moving his pieces so much. And then maybe starts thinking, well, how can I get at him? And then that's how you might find knight takes f7. Something I'll again just stress. Through experience, especially going over your own games, what you'll realize is that good players don't necessarily see all the tactics, but they do know when to think. They know when to smell when something's a little bit wrong, like knight d7. It's a big deal also if black gets to trade. We'd rather not have him trade. Okay, so here we go. Queen c7. And can we do it again? Yes, we can still play knight takes f7. Okay. Bishop c5. Now, one thing that's curious now from Black's perspective is he is not focused on fixing his bad piece, the bishop on c8. And this is definitely a moment to start thinking about it. And the reason why bishop c5 might not seem so at first, it might seem to yourself, oh, if I'm going to play something like maybe b5 anyway, that bishop c5 isn't impinging upon my bishop on c8. But imagine if we do something like this. Eventually, we'd like to play c5. So your bishop on c5 is in the way. So that's a more subtle way of showing, hey, the bishop, a move like bishop c5, even though it looks like a very natural developing move, is actually losing time by hurting the bishop on c8. All right, I thought bishop g5 was clever, just gaining some nice squares. Black should maybe think about bishop e7. I think that's where he should have gone in the first place. b5. And now, kind of a debatable point. I definitely think, though, that white should play bishop d3. And the reason is that on b3, where he goes, the bishop just has far less scope over there, right? And really, to my mind, white should say to himself, oh, I could think about the battle of tempo this way. If I can prevent or make difficult black castling, then I'm really winning the battle of time, because that dude has to castle. He needs to castle ASAP. Yeah, and if I can prevent it with a move like bishop d3 or make it difficult, that's my path. Like bishop d3 castles, queen e4, horrendously huge attack, and then bishop on c8 not in the game. Why is white winning? Because of time. The bishop on c8 is out. Okay, bishop b3. Now, while this is, let's say, ideologically correct for black to get the bishop out, it is simply also true that c4 is shutting that bishop down, right? It is simply stuck there on a6, and next move we can play b3, and we're doing great. Now, what does black need to do? Dude needs to castle. And so I want to stress that this bishop d4 is a mistake, not just because it's a tactical mistake. It's a mistake because it's moving a developed piece twice. And this time, white punishes the mistake. Again, when your opponent loses time, that is the moment to think about how to punish them. Sometimes it's not a tactical punishment. Sometimes it's just the opportunity for you to further build your position or to prevent your opponent from developing at all. And so what do we got? Queen e4. And the good news, I'll say, is that black has no good moves. First of all, because bishop takes c6 is a horrendous threat. Rook d8, not really possible because of our friend bishop takes d8. Right? So the good news I was going to say is from here on out, white cashed in, let's say, on his material advantage. And that is great because when we look at, say, the under 1,000 group, it is often when I'm looking at these games that somebody does not finish the game, and something terrible happens, right? That, however, did not happen with Basté here. He cleaned it out, and so very clinical win. And what was it ultimately about? It was about giving away time. Okay, so there it is. I think these two guys are going to make 1,200 very quickly. Basté's annotations, as most of these annotations in here, great. That is the path to make it. And right, with 1,200, we're going to start to look at a little bit about openings, and we're going to try to deepen the game as well. All right, till then.